Okay, perfect. So, next slide, please, Vivian. Thank you. So, my name is Kirsty Young. I'm an admissions and financial aid counselor here at AUR, and I have already worked with a lot of you over the past year or so it's nice to see you all here. Um, and today I have here with me Vivian Hudson, who is our admissions operations assistant and also an AUR alumna. Vivian, would you like to say hi?
Yeah, hi everybody. Yeah, so I went to AUR and now I'm happily working in admissions. So I'm happy to be talking to you guys tonight and hopefully we'll help you out a bit looking for your future home in Rome.
Thank you. And we also have Carson, who I said before, unfortunately, his video is not working today. He's a current Peace Studies student, and he's here to give you his perspective and experience on independent accommodation in Rome with lots of experience. So Carson, do you just want to say a quick hi?
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Carson, and as Kirsty already mentioned, I am a current MAP study student with AUR. I have lived in Italy for 5 full years as of next month, so I've had quite an extensive history and experience in searching for housing, so hopefully I can give you guys some helpful tips to show you where to get started.
Hey, thank you. Um, So we are going to be covering a variety of topics in today's webinar that will hopefully help you all feel a little more confident in what I'm sure feels like a really daunting search at the minute. And as you'll see on the agenda here, we're going to be starting off with some information about neighborhoods, prices, commutes, helpful websites, and tips and tricks for your search. Some of the bureaucratic stuff and the logistics, and then at the end, we'll hand it over to you for the Q&A that I'm sure you're dying to get to. So next slide, please, Vivian. Okay, so bonus topic before we do get started, and this is just a list of pros and cons and other factors that you might want to take into consideration when you're thinking about your accommodation. So this housing search is on you. AUR cannot get involved in helping with translations and contracts and those kind of things. However, individually organizing your accommodation has lots of pros to it, in the sense that you can really choose something that is right for you, and you're not restricted to sharing your room with another person or living in any specific area, for example. It also gives you more flexibility to decide on your own budget and how much you want to invest in accommodation in terms of adding your own personal items, such as furniture, etc., or whether you would rather have a place that's already set and ready to go. If you are bringing pets, make sure that you're confirming that they will be accepted by your landlord before signing any contracts, because none of us want to be without our fur babies. Rome is a city with many old buildings, so make sure you're considering costs to heat and cool your accommodation as well. Check that the windows are well sealed, for example, so you don't get any nasty drafts and end up with the classic Italian colpo d'aria. I'm going to let you Google that one. But before you do, I'm going to hand over to Carson, who is going to give you much more useful information than I am about neighborhoods and prices and commuting in Rome.
All right, so hello everyone. So obviously one of the things that everyone needs to know in order to get started is, where do you want to live? So the first thing that I should tell you is that AUR is located right on the border between the Testaccio Trastevere and the Monteverde Giani Colli Portuense area, where this big red dot is, or where this big red pointer is. Now in that area, that's where a lot of people would prefer to live because it's so close to campus. It's a very beautiful area. But one thing that I would definitely give you tips on is deciding whether or not you'd also like to venture out a little bit. From past experiences and from talking with past students, I can tell you that some students have actually said to me, you know, I wish that I would have tried to live a little bit farther away from campus or kind of contemplate living in a different area at some point. The reason why is because Rome is an incredibly walkable city. You can be almost anywhere you want in less than 30 minutes just by walking. We also do have buses as well as trams. AUR is located very close to Stazione Quattro Venti, and it's only about a 10-minute walk from campus, so it's not bad. So if you're looking to live, say, for example, in Tuscolano, Tuscolano is located very close to the historic center, closer to just outside Centro Storico. There are trains that run consistently and on time schedules versus the buses that are a little bit more disorganized, but it's still good because you're connected by good public transportation. I have lived in southern Trastevere, and I recently moved up to Montevideo Vecchio. I love this area. I will tell you that northern Trastevere, one of the things that you have to keep in mind if you're going to live in this neighborhood is that it's incredibly loud. The reason why is because this is the foodie district. It's the American College district. There's lots of nightlife going on. So it can be very loud until very late at night. So what I would say is keep this into account, because people who end up living close to this area, they tend to encounter a lot of noise. Now, Testaccio, that particular area is incredibly beautiful. It's much quieter and it's very well connected to AUR via the 75, the bus. Let's see, Marconi and San Paolo. Marconi is in the south, and it's just on the other side of the Trastevere train station. It's the one in the dark blue located in the south. I personally enjoy this area because you can find some very reasonable housing in this area. It's not super overpriced, and it is very well connected by public transportation. They have the 170, the 719, as well as several other buses which connect you to northern Trastevere, where you can catch another bus to AUR or as such. For those of you who are looking to live in Garbatella or Ostiense, Garbatella and Ostiense have a train station, as well as the 75 bus. So both can get you to AUR within, I want to say, probably about 15 to 20 minutes. But again, that depends on if you're going to the Stazione 420 or if you're going to AUR. The 75 drops you off in front of AUR, and then Stazione 420 again is about a 10-minute walk. Now, Prati and Borgo is an area that is a little bit more expensive, but I personally really enjoy it because it's very well connected to the rest of Rome. Number one, there is a metro system there. They do have the Orange Line, which connects to Valle Aurelia, which is in the Gregorio 8th district, and Baldo degli Valli in the northwest. It's the area that's purple. The good thing about this is Valle Aurelia connects to Stazione 420. So if you wanted to live in this area, you could very much rely off of the transit system and you wouldn't have to worry about buses. There are a lot of buses that connect to this area, but in some cases, people tend to find them unreliable. Those buses can be the 870, the 115, as well as the 982. So the good thing is you have a lot of options, but just keep in mind, you want to make sure that you have buses that are reliable as well. So just make sure to look out for that. Now, Centro Storico and Monti, this area is the center of Rome. This is the historic center. It's incredibly beautiful, but again, it can be a little expensive and a little loud because of the fact that it is the historic center of the city. Some areas that I would consider if you were living here is close to Campo dei Fiori. Campo dei Fiori is connected very well via the 115 and the 870 bus as well. But keep in mind, this is very similar to Trastevere. It's a little bit louder because there's some nightlife there as well in Campo dei Fiori. And then I would also consider Sant'Angelo. Sant'Angelo is an incredibly beautiful area, and it's actually the old Jewish ghetto in Rome. There's a lot of history there, as well as kosher cuisine, along with some really beautiful sites. Apartments tend to be a little bit more on the expensive side, so I would definitely be considerate of your budget. And then finally, we have Toscolano, Sangiovese, and EUR. So these particular ones are not labeled on the map, but they're a little bit more distant. So Toscolano is right next to where the yellow would be. And then San Giovanni and EUR is located just below Monteverde and Marconi. Now, these areas are a little distant, but they do have a metro system. So if you are deciding that you want to live in these areas, keep in mind that you will be able to get to AUR. It's just going to take you a little bit more time to commute. And this is why I'd say consider where you're going to live now when you're looking. You have to understand the bus system. How far are you willing to commute? What is your ideal commute, if any, etc., things like that. And I think that pretty much covers it, unless Kirsty or Vivian, you guys have anything you want to add?
Oh, great.
Fantastic. All right. So the next thing that you also want to consider is pricing. and things as such. For those of you, I know I'm in the group chat for some of the grad students, and I understand that housing has been a little difficult recently because of, a number of issues. But if you decide that you want to perhaps rent a room in a shared apartment instead of an Airbnb for the first time for when you first get here, that could be considered ideal because rooms in the Monteverde Vecchio area, they tend to be much less pricey than renting an Airbnb for an entire month. If you decide that you want to rent a room permanently while you're in Monteverde Vecchio or any other neighborhood, just know that they're typically going to go for anywhere between roughly 350 to 750 euros. This is the average. Now, you might want to specify on Spotahome, for example. That's the best app that I would use in order to find rooms. You might want to specify how, who you want to, how many people you want to live with, exactly what you'd like in this room. I do believe that they allow for private bathrooms as well. Yeah, so then another thing is studio apartments. Studio apartments are obviously very popular as well. The average studio will typically go for about 800 euros to 1,000. And that is the estimate for across the area which we're currently in, as well as Prati, Borgo, Centro Storico areas as such. That's for Central Rome. Now, a one-bedroom apartment is 1,000 to 1,200 on average from what you can see in the Immobiliare app. Immobiliare is good if you want to live on your own and you want to find housing very similar to the way Italians do. The only thing that I will tell you, and this is from my personal experience of the past year living in Rome, I feel as though it's ideal if you decide that you want to live on your own to keep your budget to a maximum of 1,100 euros, I would say. And the reason why I say that is because of the fluctuating exchange rates. Right now, the euro is becoming stronger. And so you want to make sure that if you're budgeting accordingly, that you make sure that you're not, purchasing something that's too expensive because, again, we're working on an exchange rate. So you want to make sure that the money isn't going to go beyond your budget at any point in time. Now, for those of you who are perhaps contemplating getting a roommate, what I will say to you is that the ideal number of roommates in my experience is 1. I know people that have had 2, 3, I even met someone who had 4 roommates at one point and they rented a very big apartment. But what I will say is that when you're moving to Rome for the first time, you want to make sure that it's a smooth transition. And I personally feel that the best way to do that is just by limiting how much space you're sharing with others. I believe that the ideal number is 1 person to share your apartment with. That's just from my personal experience. The good thing about it is if you find a 2-bedroom in Rome, normally they can go for anywhere between 1,300 to 1,800 euros. Now, within that, there leaves a lot of room for utilities included, as well as, splitting costs and everything, as well as, having someone to hang out with while you're here as well. There's a lot of benefits to it. So it can cut a lot of costs. And for example, my friend of mine, a very dear friend who I met through AUR, we shared a 2-bedroom apartment together and it was only $700 a person with the exchange rate. So this area in particular is very affordable. All of Rome is very affordable compared to, what I know some of us might be paying in the States. So that is what I will tell you to consider when coming to AUR and Rome. All right. So another thing that we also want to keep in mind, as I mentioned earlier, is commuting to and from AUR. So there are several bus stops located just outside AUR in the area. It's called Carini Quattroventi or Bone Quattroventi is the particular stations or the stops. At these stops that we have, so we have the 44, the 75 are my 2 personal favorites because they're very efficient. There's also the 870. The 982 and the 115, those buses connect you to Campo dei Fiori, as well as the Prati Borgo Pio area, which is incredibly nice as it's the area close to the Vatican. Now the 871 connects you to Southern Trastevere, so very close to the Trastevere station. If you're looking to buy something in South Trastevere, that area is ideal as well because it's not close to any of the big partying or anything like that. It's also good because they do have a pretty reliable bus line that meets at the Trastevere station that you can take to get to AUR in roughly 15 minutes. So I would recommend that as well. And then last but not least, the 710 bus. The 710 connects us to Portuense. Portuense is a nice area that is very convenient if you're looking for something much more affordable. And the good thing is that the bus stop for Portuense, the 710, is legitimately the last stop is right outside AUR. So the bus normally sits there for quite some time. So it's a pretty reliable bus, I would say. So another things that you should consider when coming to AUR are useful apps to download. Below, we have a few useful apps for you guys, including MoveIt, Moonigo, and Citymapper. Now, these apps are useful, but what I would also tell you to consider is, you have to consider what buses are you going to need, when, and the type of transportation that you're going to be purchasing. So for those of you who are curious, there is a student discount bus pass that runs between September and May that goes for, I believe, 150 euros. So it's a bus pass that works for 9 months for a total of 150 euros for that entire 9 months. So it's very reasonable. This works for all transportation, buses, metro, and things like that within the city limits, but keep in mind that it does not work outside the city limits, I believe. If you are taking the train, for example, to Fiumicino, or the local airport in Rome, I don't believe that the Metro Pass works in order to get you to the airport, so keep that in mind wherever you are traveling. Another thing that I would also tell you to consider is using the Maps app on your phone. Recently, they actually have, for those of you who have the Apple, I don't know if they did this on Android, but they updated the app so that way if you are curious about transportation or how to get from point A to point B, your Maps app actually has a section on it which is specifically designed to tell you about public transportation where you are. And all you have to do is click on an icon located in the top right. And there are a selection of maps there. So they have Explore, Driving, Transit, and Satellite. If you click on Transit, it will actually give you a list of all the best options of how to get from point A to point B and vice versa. So it's really convenient.
Thank you, Carson. So hi, guys. So today I'm going to be talking to you about where to find apartments. So that'll be listing websites, rental agencies, Facebook groups, or even Airbnb. So we've talked a little bit about Immobiliare and Idealista, and I would say those two are very similar. And I also want to say that it's very important, even though they are similar, you might see similar listings. There are those few that are different and specialize on each one. So definitely take the time to look on both of them. And then there's rental agencies. The thing with rental agencies is they might have a higher fee, especially when booking with them. And then Facebook groups, there are plenty of Facebook groups to look on. If you're not already in them, I would say join looking for apartments in Rome, rental in Rome, expats in Rome is a good one where people will either post when they have apartments available, or you can always share and say, hi, I'm going to be moving to Rome in September. I'm looking for an apartment for X amount of months, and this is my budget. And some people will get back to you. The issue with that is sometimes you could come along scammers, and we'll get to that later, but that's something you'll want to look out with, especially on Facebook groups. And then there's Airbnb. I'm sure that some advice that you've heard is that maybe it might be best to get an Airbnb first when you're getting here. It might be a little bit easier because there's not all the contracts that you'd have to be dealing with when going through Immobiliare and Idealista and rental agencies. But nevertheless, there's still options here, and Facebook. It's just about finding where they're at and what's best for you. And next, I'll be kind of talking to you about how to make your search easier on you and to save your time. So here's the best ways to use the search function and filters. So when going through the apps Idealista and Immobiliare, you will have filter choices, and these filters you can, as you can see here, you can select exactly which area you're looking for. You can select how big you want your apartment to be, how many rooms, how many bathrooms, in case you're looking to go in on an apartment with other people. You can put in your budget. You can select if you want air conditioning. You can search if you want a balcony. And that to me is what I always do just to save that time, because it's an endless scroll. There are many apartments. So save your time, put in exactly what you want, and that'll be the best. And then you can also show if you want a private landlord or agency, again, all the amenities that you want, Wi-Fi, if you want to bring your dog. So really utilize those search functions to make your search easier and faster. As you can see here, this is more of what the exact filters will look like. So the bathrooms, the floor, the one thing about being on the first floor is sometimes the pianotera that can be underground. So when you're walking along the streets, you might see those where like they're literally, you're on the street and then you see a little window on the ground. So when you're looking for pianotera, check out for that because it's not on the first floor. It's like underground or on the first floor, but just check out for that. And then there will be like intermediate and then last floors. And then one thing you should also check for if you are looking to be on a higher level is if the building has an elevator, and it should list that. And then there's also garages, but that's more if you have a car planning to do that. Okay, thank you.
Hey, thank you, Carson and Vivian. Super useful information. So for much of the bureaucracy in Italy, you will require a codice fiscale or a tax code. This is an identification code, but it's not like a social security number in the US. It's very public. And it's created using a formula of a person's name, date of birth, and place of birth. So you're going to need this for things like renting an apartment, opening a bank account, applying to have utility bills transferred to your name, or getting an Italian SIM card and things like that. Some consulates are able to provide a service which allows you to get your codice fiscale before you even arrive in Italy. So you may want to try contacting your local consulate. But you can also request an appointment online to get one by following the QR code that's on this slide. So I'm going to leave that there for a second for anybody who wants to scan it, because there's some useful information in general about that code. And then when we're ready, we can move to the next slide. Okay, go for it, Vivian. Thank you. So your knowledge of the codice fiscale and how it's generated and used could actually be really useful when looking out for scammers. So aside from the more obvious flags, such as people asking for money before you've signed anything, requesting cash only, not wanting to meet via Zoom or face-to-face, a scammer will often omit information from their fake contracts. And so you should expect to see full names, codice fiscale, and date of birth of both the landlord and the tenant on any contract that you're signing. Remember that the name and the date of birth are used to generate that codice fiscale. So if the letters in the codice fiscale don't really match very well with the name, this should already be a flag for you. Okay. The codice fiscale is also very unlikely to have any vowels in the first 6 letters as well, so that could be another flag for you. I think in this case, the best advice I can give is go with your gut. If something doesn't feel right, it's probably not. So don't sign anything that you're not sure about, and don't give anybody any money if you can't confirm their identity. Next slide, please. Oh, well, someone's got to scan it. So here, oh, what? Oh, it was an interactive one. Sorry. So that's just some examples of what a fake contract can look at with the red box, and the green box is kind of what an actual genuine contract is likely to look like. Okay. Perfect. So continuing on the same theme of safety, you need to make sure that you're keeping both yourself and your possessions safe in Rome, just like most other major cities. So Rome is a very safe city in general, but the most common crime is petty theft, particularly on public transport and in tourist areas. In order to keep your apartment safe, you will notice that all apartments have these shutter type things And there's a little picture there with the white shutter. They're either like this, that they come down, or there are sometimes the ones, you can see the green ones in the background there, that open and close like this. Aside from being great for keeping the heat out in the summer if you don't have AC, they will also help in the safety of your apartment. So just make sure that you're closing those shutters when you're leaving your apartment or at night when you're going to bed, just for that extra security in your apartment. If you're planning to travel outside of the city, make sure that you're not spreading that information too much outside of the AUR community. Of course, you want to tell somebody you're traveling, your close friends, just so that they know and they're aware where you are, nobody's worrying about you. But don't spread information about your apartment being empty. You don't want people to know that unless it's necessary. Of course, don't buzz anybody into the building if you don't know them. Oftentimes in Italy, delivery people will just like run their finger down all the buzzers just to be able to get into the building to deliver a package or deliver mail or whatever it is. It happens, but you really shouldn't be buzzing anybody in if you don't know them or if you're not expecting them. So just be aware of these small things. Again, Rome is a very safe city. Thankfully, we don't have huge rates of crime, but we just need to be protecting ourselves as much as possible. So next slide, please, Vivian. Okay, so what to pack is a really big one. I think there is a tendency of when you're packing, I mean, even when I go on vacation, I don't even know what I want to pack. So packing to move to another country is really difficult because you don't know what to expect. You don't know what you're going to find there. Necessities and your favorite items, maybe things that you won't be able to get here. So peanut butter is always a big one for people coming from the US. I think people always want peanut butter or Reese's because we don't have those over here. But things that you're likely to miss, and that's also something that you're going to learn over time because it's not something that you're going to know you're going to miss until you're away from it. Apartments in Rome in general are probably going to be smaller than what you're used to, especially storage space within the apartment as well. So make sure that you're not overpacking and then you don't have space to put everything when you actually arrive. What you will want to do is pack for your first week at least, because it's going to be a very busy week with orientation activities and you're not going to have much time to shop. Some of you may have jet lag depending where you're coming from. You're going to be socializing, meeting lots of new people. So you want to be thinking about plug converters, your hairdryer, your straightener, your makeup, all those things that you're using on a daily basis that you probably wouldn't find in a normal apartment. If you're getting a furnished apartment, then most of the time they will have basic necessities such as pots and pans and plates, things like that. But you can also pick things up pretty cheaply in some of the local stores. And all the areas that we've mentioned have pretty good access to the stores in general. And so we've just listed a few useful stores for household items and decorative items. Obviously, you want to make this house your own. You want to put your stamp on it. So there are a couple of IKEAs in Rome. However, they are quite far and not difficult to get to with public transport, but you're going to have to put a good amount of time aside to get there. And it can be difficult to bring things back if you're getting bigger items. So closer to your apartments, there's probably going to be places like Upim, Satur, Casanova, as you're seeing on there. We have great secondhand stores in Rome as well. So they are mercatini, and you'll see them. There's also one very close to the university on Viale di Quattrovetti, Mercatino dell'Usato. They're great for picking up like cheap things secondhand. If you need some glasses or plates or whatever, things like that. And they also have some real gems in terms of clothes as well. Clothes is actually a difficult one to pack for the full semester because it's really hot when you get here, but then come like November, December, it's starting to get kind of cold. So just make sure that you're bringing some layers that you can wear as well as you're getting towards the winter. If you're ordering on Amazon, make sure that you're not ordering from Amazon.com because you're very likely to have to pay customs fees, and often the customs fees will cost more than your actual item that you're purchasing. So make sure you're ordering from Amazon.it. You could also order from the German Amazon or the French Amazon, Spanish Amazon if you really want to, because they don't have customs fees with being in the EU. Dublin as well. Sorry, Republic of Ireland. But obviously, the Italian Amazon is probably going to have smaller delivery fees and things like that. So that's the best one to go with. So I think that's it from me. Vivian or Carson, do you have anything that you want to add before we go into the Q&A? No?
No.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Okay, so we're gonna hand it over to you guys for your questions now. We do have about 25 minutes, but obviously we're not gonna keep you if there aren't that many questions. But we're here and happy to answer anything you want to know. I've seen a couple of questions coming in, so I'm just gonna go through those to start off with. As I mentioned at the beginning of the session, if you're comfortable being recorded and you would rather unmute and turn your video on, whatever, you can ask questions that way, or you can simply write them in the chat. Okay. So Carson, I'm going to look to you for this question. Nikki is asking, what app or where can you purchase a student bus pass?
So you can purchase student bus passes at any station around the city. Most stations have a help desk where you can purchase passes and things like that, as well as just tickets and things as such. The app which you can purchase is called ATAC. It's ATAC, and I do believe it's available in the App Store on Apple phones and Android as well. This particular app is good if you want to purchase the student pass. You can also use it just to pay simply with your card. When you purchase a pass, you can order a pass that is printable, or you can keep it on your phone. And when you get on the bus, they're going to have an electronic verification system located at the front. It's a red and black box almost, and you can verify it through there. Or if you have it on your phone, you could just show, in case if ever the police do get on the bus to check for tickets, you can just show them that you have the pass, and it's very simple.
Great, thank you. Okay, another question. Is it okay to send things directly to our apartments? Okay, so we usually advise that you have things sent to the university. The reason being that if you're having things delivered to your apartment and your name is not on your buzzer, they don't always know which apartment they're delivering to. So if you're having things delivered to the university, obviously we have a record of you as a student. We have your email addresses on files, and our reception team are fantastic with packages, and they will collect them. They put them in safe storage until you're able to come and pick them up, and they will notify you when they're here.
If I may add to that, Kirsty.
Yeah.
So I will say the reception team at AUR is, like you said, fantastic. I mail everything there. If you ever order clothes, I order clothes to AUR and have them drop it off there. I have ordered air conditioners. I have ordered pretty much everything. They keep everything in a packaging system located in a room right next to reception, and they're very quick. Within probably 2 hours of receiving it, they will email you. And the good thing about them is that they are open Monday through Friday from, I believe, 9 to 6. So they are available anytime that you're on campus. So you could pick it up from after class and just take it home with you. Very easy.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Even the staff use that, and I don't think we're supposed to, but nobody needs to know that. Okay. Oh, sorry, Kelly. You're saying you cut out and you didn't hear the answer to that question. It's best if you can just send your mail to the university, because then our reception can sort things out. It just makes it a little bit easier than having it get lost in your apartment buildings. Okay. So another question. I've used Amazon.it and I let them deliver to a Dropbox near my Airbnb. which was a bar or cafe just 5 minutes away from where I was staying. Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you, Leslie. And now Amazon do have drop points around the city. So if you prefer, you can have them go to the drop point instead of coming to university. If you're getting something heavy, for example, you don't want to have to lug it all the way from university to your apartment, then those drop-off things would be great. So yeah, really good advice. Thank you. Okay, for Vivian or another alum, how did you find your roommates? Did you network with other AUR students, or have you ever lived with people who are not from AUR? Any suggestions are welcome. That's a great question. Thank you.
Yeah, so my first semester at AUR, I came in as a freshman undergrad. So I lived in AUR student housing, and then I did independent housing my second semester, and I moved in with two of my friends. So besides that, I've never lived with anyone who wasn't from AUR, but what I've heard is that if you do that, it's usually from those Facebook groups that I mentioned, or if you're going through, I feel like it's more uni places where, or when you rent a room and then you're just renting just the room, then you don't really know the other roommates. My friend is doing that right now. And that I would say is a little bit better, because sometimes like the situation with my friends, it's a little bit difficult if someone has to leave, someone wants to leave or has to leave, and then what do you do with your contract? But if you're doing just renting a room, then you're on your own contract. You can make your own deals with the landlord and you don't have to worry about what your other roommates are doing.
Yeah, really good advice. Thank you, Vivian. Carson, I know you kind of talked about your experience a bit before. I don't know if you have anything that you want to add.
So my personal story with finding roommates is my first semester. I lived with two people that I met through the AUR group chat, and we shared a 3-bedroom apartment. You know, it was very affordable, but it wasn't in the most ideal location. So I ended up moving my second semester to Montevideo Vecchio with my friend Tatum, who was in my same cohort. I met her again through school. The best way to find roommates, in my opinion, is just to find people who are in the same situation. You know, use the AUR group chats, find someone who can help, who is in the same situation, wants to find housing, is looking for a similar budget, or, you know, kind of looking for the same thing as you. I will say that I do recommend the ideal number of roommates is 1. The reason why is because there's a dynamic with having more than one roommate, which is, you know, in some cases, something happens. We all know that things happen and some things are inevitable. And when this happens, you know, a lot of people in some cases can feel, I don't know, maybe alienated or ganged up on, and it creates an awkward tension. When it's one roommate when it's one roommate, there's only 2 of you, so you guys learn to communicate a little better. I feel that's just my personal recommendation, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I did not come to Rome as a student, so my experience is a little bit different. However, I did rent a room with other people and I didn't know those people. I was very lucky. They were great. And I found that through a Facebook group. And people mainly, when they're posting in those groups, will say a little bit about themselves. So they'll say either like, we're a group of students, or we're young working adults, or whatever. And people tend to kind of share a little bit about their interests. So I think as long as you're looking for people with common interests, things like that, should be okay. And, you know, things happen in general anywhere where roommates don't get on, unfortunately, sometimes. But I think you just have to remember that nothing is permanent and you can always get out of a contract or a difficult situation. And it's a learning curve, you know. It's another part of being away from home and moving to a new city and experiencing what it's like to be independent and living in a city on your own for the first time. So it's scary, but it's good. Okay, a couple more questions. How long do packages from Amazon.it usually take to deliver? That's a great question that I can't answer. It depends on what you're ordering and where you're ordering it from. Amazon will tell you an estimated delivery date. Some things they do have same-day delivery if you have Prime particularly. Other things can take like 2 to 3 weeks if they're coming from other parts of the world. So yeah, really depends. it's Amazon, so who knows? Soaya is asking, what are the websites? Yes, Vivian, if you can please go back to the slide that has a QR code for finding websites, I think that would be super helpful for people. Yeah, so this
Here we
QR
go.
code, perfect, thank you. This QR code will take you to a PDF, which is also available on My AUR. So if you don't get it in time, don't worry. It's great. It has information about the neighborhoods. It has information about where you can, some of the websites and the Facebook groups that you can use to be finding apartments. And there are a couple of resources on My AUR, so make sure that you're referring to that as well. We'll just leave that slide up there in case anybody's running to grab their phone or anything. Any experience with owning a pet or getting a dog walker in Italy? Is that common? Okay, I have a dog. I grew up with animals, but I grew up with animals in the countryside. So I lived on a farm growing up. There were a few things that I didn't consider about having a dog in a city, and my family are complete dog people, but obviously they're in England. So the thing that I struggle the most with is when I want to travel, I find it really difficult to be able to do that because my dog is not a traveler. So it's just kind of difficult to find someone to take care of him, but not because there are not people available, just because my dog is not very trusting of people he doesn't know. So we can really only leave him with my in-laws, but they're not major dog people. So, you know, they take him because they love him, but I think you just kind of have to consider, like, who do you have around? How is your pet in general as well? You know, if you have a really chill dog who is able to kind of get on with anybody, I think you'll not have a problem finding dog walkers. Even the students at AUR are always happy to dog walk, even if you can just offer them a little bit of money on the side. We're all students at the end of the day. Well, not me, but everybody else is a student at the end of the day and looking for a way to earn a little bit extra cash as well. So definitely advertise if you're looking for a dog walker within the university. But in general, in the neighborhood, Monteverde particularly has two fantastic parks for dogs. There's Villa Sciara, which is a smaller one. There's a really nice dog walking community at Villa Sciara. I used to go every morning when I lived there and I loved it. And then also Villa Pamphili, which is much, much bigger and a really good space for your dog to be able to run around. And there is a dedicated dog area in Villa Pamphili, which there is not in Villa Sciara. So legally you shouldn't be letting your dog off the leash in Villa Sciara, but a lot of people do it anyway. Just watch out for the police. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, I would say it is common and it's definitely doable. But my personal experience of having a dog in the city has been a little bit difficult, but I think it's also my choice of dog and the anxiety that he has. So yeah. I could talk about my dog forever, so I'm gonna see if anybody else has any other questions. Otherwise, I'm just gonna talk about him.
I have one. How long is a typical lease in Rome? And is it common to like get one for just like an academic year, or are they like 1 year, 2 year?
I saw Matt McCarthy unmute himself, so I think he's eager to answer that question.
So what I can tell you about leasing in Italy is that there are several types of contracts that you'll notice whenever you search. If you use Spotahome, they're particularly big on date estimation. So you put in there, I need it from September 1st until May 23rd, for example. They will give you, you'll be required to pay all the bills between those 2 dates, including rent and utilities, things like that. If you use Immobiliare or Idealista, one of the things that you're going to notice, some typically below the rental, when you click on the specific listing, is they're going to say the type of contract. So there is a transitorio, that is a transition contract. Those are contracts which are flexible, typically ranging in less than a year, usually about 6 to 9 months. Now, the university program is 10 months, so it's perfect if you ever find anything that is a transitorio, because you know that's ideal. You don't want to have an extra 2 months of rent that you have to pay if you don't have to. Another thing that you also will see is that there's also a 3+, there are numbers at the bottom. It says 3+2, 3+3, 4+4. Those are contracts which refer to the number of years that you're supposed to rent. Now, a lot of those contracts are 3 years or 4 years, but they come with addendums with them. So typically those addendums include notes that say, you can leave earlier, you just have to give me 6 months notice or 3 months notice. And that's what Kirsty was kind of talking about earlier with, there's always the possibility of getting out of a contract, because in some case, let's say you move into an apartment that has a 3+2 contract, for example, so it's 3 years plus 2, and you don't like it, and it has an addendum that says, okay, if you give me 3 months notice, you can leave. If you let them know by October, you only have to pay rent up until the end of January, and then you could potentially find an apartment from February to May, or if you'd like to stay longer through the summer, February to August. You have a little bit of personal freedom with it, but I would make sure that the contract that you sign has that sort of addendum, because I'm not sure if it's within every contract, but more often than not, it has an addendum with it that states, just give me typically 3 months notice.
Yeah, exactly. Great information, Carson. And as Carson said, typically it's going to be 6 months or 3 months. However, I have had situations where I've been able to negotiate that down at the moment of signing the contract. I had an apartment where my landlady knew that her apartment was really attractive and she was able to rent it out immediately as soon as somebody left. And so she said, okay, usually it would be a 3 to 6 month notice period, but because I know that I'm going to rent it as soon as I put it on the market, I'm happy to reduce that down to 1 month. So there is room for negotiation there as well. Just make sure that it's a conversation you're having before signing the contract as well, because obviously once the contract is signed, it's a little bit more difficult.
Great, thank you both.
Yeah, of course. So we have about 10 minutes left. If anybody has any last minute questions, feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat, unmute yourself, whatever you prefer. Just going to give people a couple more minutes in case they are writing anything and don't want to cut them off. If anybody needs any of the QR codes, let us know. We can click back and forward to the slides. There was this QR code for the places to look for apartments. There was one about the tax code information. And there was also one about prices in Rome and general neighborhoods and prices. So if anybody wants to see those QR codes, just write that in the chat and we'll be happy to go back to that. As I say, all that information is also available on my AUR, so you do have access to it again if you need it. This recording will also be published on our private YouTube page as well. So there will be access to it. If you feel like you've missed anything, you want to go back, then you can obviously flick through and pause it for the information that you need as well. That will probably come, the link will probably come to you in a follow-up email afterwards as well. And Vivian, if you can just go to the very last slide for a second. Not that one. Perfect, thank you. And so there's just the admissions contact email address on there. I'm sure you all have it already, but if you do have any questions for us, feel free to email admissions. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. Graduate students, you can email gradschool@aur.edu, and we'll be happy to answer questions there. Carson, I believe you are still on UniBuddy, so I'm sure Carson would be happy to talk to people through our website. And grad students, he's also available in the grad group chat, because as you've seen, he's an amazing resource. So take
and
advantage
Kirsty,
of him.
if you would like, I'm going to put in the chat right now my email, as well as, right here is my email for anyone who has any questions. And I know that I'm already in the graduate student group chat, but just for anyone who's curious, this is my personal WhatsApp number. Just in case they have any questions as well. I just put them both in the group chat. Now, I have already started talking with a couple of those of you who are in the graduate student chat, and I'm attempting to help a lot of people kind of work out housing. What I will say about housing, and I just say this because I was there just a short time ago, I remember how it is. Housing in this area does typically go quick, but don't feel defeated simply by the fact that you're not getting, the dream apartment that you have, or, you had something and then it kind of fell through. When I first came to Rome, I felt such anxiety about coming because it was like late May. I didn't have an apartment yet and I felt so worried. And so what I did is I ended up going for an apartment that had 3 bedrooms. It was relatively cheap, but it didn't really have everything I was looking for, and it was small. And I do regret making that kind of decision out of on impulse. So what I will say to you is, everything happens for a reason. If an apartment doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I promise you, you will find something that is amazing. Rome is a city where, what's the name of the city again? They say it's the city of love, or is it the city of light, or
The Eternal City, no?
the eternal, that's it. I'm sorry, I forgot. It is the eternal city. So I promise you, they've been I'm coughing. They have been creating dreams for thousands of years, and they will continue to do so for those of you who are coming to AUR. So take a breath, y'all. I promise everything's going to work out.
Absolutely. Thank you, Carson. Thank you, Vivian. And thank you, everybody else, for coming. We're always available for questions, but I'm going to let you all go now. So thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, I
Ciao,
actually want to
everyone.
save my question till the end because it was kind
Yeah.
of personal to my needs. I came late, and so I missed the part where you were talking about the Monte neighborhood, and that's kind of where I'm planning on living because I have a friend who's going to La Sapienza, and we were going to be roommates. So would you mind repeating what you said about Monte earlier, or any other
Yeah.
advice you have for that area?
Yeah, so what I will tell you is that Monte, it's very close to the Centro Storico, or the historic center of the city. That area is primarily close to the Roman Forum and the Colosseum. The great thing about that area is that it's really well connected to AUR by the train system. So very close to Monte is the Stazione Centrale, or the Rome Central Station. They also have the 75 bus, which is super convenient because it runs directly from the Colosseum to AUR. So for those of you who get done with your classes and you think you want to go have lunch by the Colosseum, just hop on the 75. But it's a really great area, and I will tell you that San Lorenzo, if you're looking in that area, is a really nice neighborhood. I don't know, have you already found your apartment yet, or is it just about the Monte district in general?
Yeah, I'm still looking.
I would recommend looking in San Lorenzo. The reason why is because San Lorenzo is right next to the train station, but it's a really pretty area. It's really cool. It's got good nightlife and everything. It's not too loud. It's close to Sapienza, and you can typically find affordable housing because it's such a student-centered area. And then while you're living over there, make sure to check out the public transportation, because at Rome Central Station, they have the metro that is below ground for the orange and blue line, and they're developing the green line, but I think that'll be finished sometime around maybe like 2035, so we'll see. But over there, they have really good public transportation. They're working on the metro, and they also have the above ground train system that runs on consistent times. So you can actually take a train all the way from there to Stazione Quattro Venti, which is the one that's just 10 minutes from school. And it's very convenient. I actually knew someone who would walk to AUR from San Lorenzo, and it was an hour walk every morning. I thought he was crazy for doing it, but he loves walks. So, enjoy.
Well, that's good to know. Thanks for that. And then also I spoke to one of my professors about, living in Rome and all that, and he possibly recommended getting an e-bike, or like, would you have any advice for that? Or
so all over the city, you can find Lime bikes. Lime bikes are very popular. Let me find. I have all the apps on my phone because I just use it. So there's Link, or Super Pedestrian. There's Lime, and then there's also I want to say it's Nook, N-O-O-K, or something like that. So there's a number of useful transportation devices that are come in the form of scooters and bikes. They're convenient, but they tend to add up a little quick because, especially if you're coming from the Monte district, the reason why I say that is because so they charge by time and distance. So I typically take one from like the top of the bottom of the hill to AUR for about 10 minutes, and it ends up being about €3. But if you use that, every day, for example, or say 5 days a week, for example, it can add up pretty quickly, especially if you're doing it to and from. If you decide that you want, I would purchase your own bike if I had to recommend, if that's what you're asking, because I think that that would save you a lot of money over the course of time. Because if you use the bike or the scooter, for example, all the way from the Monti district, it's probably going to cost you 10 to 15 euros per day. And then, you know, times 20, it's, oh gosh, calculator.
A lot.
A lot, yeah. Yeah. My head didn't work fast enough.
Mine doesn't with math in this time, this time of the evening. No way. It's a lot. Is what he's saying. But yeah, what I would add to that. So I think you have to be a very confident and aware cyclist if you're going to cycle in Rome, because the drivers in Rome kind of make their own rules. So you just have to be aware of that. I personally, I have a bike. I don't like to use it in Rome. But it's a personal preference, because I'm also one of those people who I live in my own world and I'm not really super aware of my surroundings. So I'm just not the right kind of person to be cycling around a city like Rome. And there are some some cycle paths, but they tend to be along the river. So if you're using it every day to get to and from AUR, those are not greatly positioned for you. If you are planning to get a bike, I would say there's a Facebook group, and I know nobody's on Facebook anymore, but it's super useful, called Expats in Rome. And you'll find that a lot of the expats who are moving away are selling their bikes. So it's kind of a place to get them a little bit cheaper. I often see bikes for sale on there, e-bikes or just regular road bikes as well, or mountain bikes, whatever you want. So
Cool.
Check that out.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your help. Y'all have a good one.
Thanks. You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for coming.
Okay. Any final questions before we end it? All set? Okay. Well, thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.